If your partner, if your husband or your wife asked to go to a sex party without you, how would you react? When mine asked me, I was probably as shocked as you are right now. But that moment was a turning point in my life. No, not because I left him, or he left me, or that we became polyamorous, but because that moment significantly marked a change, not in my relationship with him, but in my relationship to myself. I'd like to share my journey with you to that point and beyond it. From trauma to truth to transformation. A journey towards embodying presence. The ability to anchor in the now moment using your focused attention. To create space between your thoughts, and to use the power of your free will to choose to respond with wisdom instead of reacting from fear. And I share with you this story not to prepare you to discuss sex parties with your partner, but if that's on the table, more power to you, but to share with you the tools to question the stories that you tell yourself, to find answers that you already possess, and to forge a new relationship with yourself and with the world. When I met my husband, he was the answer to a prayer. In 2007, leaving a nightclub, I slipped into an empty church at dawn. Churches were a place of refuge. I grew up going to church. The vaulted ceilings, the wooden pews, and the higher power I felt looking over me. But that morning, I didn't look the part of a worshiper, but I knelt and prayed in my heels and dress for a husband, telling myself the stories about who he would be and where we would meet. And 1 month later, right here, off the shores of Ibiza, we met on a boat. He was everything I dreamed of. Charming, charismatic, adventurous. His reputation as an international playboy didn't daunt me. I had my wild side too. I knew I'd met my match. His friends said I was hallucinating, that he would never settle down. A wild Italian stallion, too wild for any stables to contain. I was up for the challenge. I was living in Paris, he was in New York, and we dated for 3 years. And then he asked me to move in with him. I said yes. The first years were like the Wild West, New York at its peak, or so I imagined. Oscillating highs, mostly booze and blow-induced, and excruciating lows, feelings of shame and loss. Soon enough, I felt the urge to quiet down and to live a more settled life. But my husband still wanted to explore, to drive his yellow Ferrari in search of new experiences, new people, swinger clubs, sex clubs, play parties, women in leather and lace. This new genre of intimacy felt unbridled and reckless, unsafe. But after a lifetime of conditioning, I had gotten good at saying yes. I'll never forget at one party a symbol of my religious upbringing, but this time it was a nightmarish deception. A woman bound naked to a cross. A perverse reminder of the prayer I had sent skyward had landed me here. I felt lost, unmoored. More and more, I turned to alcohol and drugs to numb my feelings. And more, he turned to sex to feel his more deeply. The voids within us and between us widened. And I remember looking in the mirror and distinctly not recognizing the person looking back at me. We hosted a fascinating array of people at our loft then, experts my husband interviewed for his documentary films. Dr. Gabor Mate, renowned physician and specialist on trauma and addiction, came to stay with us. One night, as I was faithfully playing the role of accommodating hostess, how can I help you? Is there anything that you need? Are you comfortable? Gabor stopped me. Widely known for his insights, he immediately noticed what I was doing, making everyone else comfortable and forgetting about myself. He asked if I had always done that, and yes, I had. That was the first time I ever felt fully seen by someone else. Gabor explained that reflexive kindness can be a coping mechanism, a way to seek validation. He prompted me to look inwards and ask myself if I was denying myself access to my own truth in other ways. I decided it was time to get sober, to learn to sit with myself, and to become more clear. This prompted me to go on a new journey, one that released me from my self-destructive path. I learned tools to see myself honestly, without judgment, with compassion, and to make changes to live a life of embodied presence. Without substances, I could articulate who I was and what I wanted. I learned I wasn't a victim, but that these impulses were a result of unresolved traumas from my past. I learned tools to view myself and to connect to my emotions, to feel them more deeply, especially the uncomfortable ones. I had spent a lifetime denying my own desires out of fear of losing those that I loved. In renegotiating my relationship to my own vulnerability, I found the courage to say no to the wild nights, the women bound to crosses, and to say yes to so many other things. We replaced sex parties with couples tantra retreats where we could explore together in a safe environment. There we learned tools such as conscious touch, transparent communication, and we felt a deeper emotional connection. And I learned that sexuality can be a portal to the divinity if expressed from our authentic selves and not used to fill a void or to subdue pain. Soon enough, however, the growth of my strength was tested. Long after we had both become sober, long after I was living a life of embodying presence and even began my own therapy practice, my husband turned to me and said, "Do you mind if I go to a tantra retreat alone?" That question hit me like a bomb. I felt a surge of unwelcome thoughts. Every terrible story I had told myself was coming true. I wasn't good enough. I couldn't please him. He would meet someone else. I couldn't change him. And the worst possible thing would happen. I would be left alone. But this time, I stayed connected to my sadness. I interrogated my impulse to say yes and the impulse to say no. I questioned the resistance. Was this coming from the grounded, compassionate, centered self I had developed through my practice, or from my armored, people-pleasing self I had once been? And all at once I knew the answer to his question and to mine. I let go. I said yes. He could attend the retreat with boundaries. No sex, no phone numbers. In letting go of the stories that I had been telling myself, I found for the first time inside of my body a sense of home. Instead of a void, I felt space. I felt freedom. Because none of those stories had been real. I had created them. Once they had protected me, and then they controlled me. In letting them go, I took my power back. And you might think this was a risk for my relationship, but even that I was ready to accept at the time. And I know this doesn't work for everyone, but for me, for us, this worked. It turned out to be the best decision we could have ever made. Because when he came back, he was a different person, liberated from his anxiety, more attuned to his needs, and therefore receptive to mine. He was a better listener, more present. Not because I had tried to change him, but because he had decided to change himself. And I had allowed him the space to do that. In letting go of our stories, he could be him, and I could be me, and we were no longer reaching to one another to fill our voids. So my journey from trauma to transformation through compassion and presence reminds me that we are here to guide one another back into connection with ourselves. And in my practice as a psychotherapist, I've seen people use these tools to transform their relationships to themselves, to their partners, to drugs and to alcohol, and the delusions and the addictions of our consumeristic culture. Using the principles of self-inquiry and of embodying presence, we can challenge the stories that we tell ourselves, that we're not good enough, that we aren't worthy, or that we don't deserve to be happy. For me, this journey was years long, but it begins with this simple act of checking in, of tuning in with yourself and noticing, of seeing yourself. And this practice we can do right here in this powerful place. So I invite you to close your eyes, to tune into your body, and tuning into your heart, asking yourself where within you might be a hidden story holding you back from your liberated self. dropping in to your body and feeling into the layers underneath this story, and turning towards yourself with kindness, with compassion, and with grace, understanding that it's from this space that you create your life. And then gently allowing your eyes to open, turning towards the world, grounded and open for connection. Thank you.